Hi, it's me Bhavan. I have been working with Sahana for the rostering tool. This has been my GSoC project for the year 2012. So yeah, what this tool basically does is it allows you to create a roster. The roster can be for a list of people or volunteers. This roster is valid for organizations, for projects, and for incidences. It could also be extended to scenarios, but the scenario module is currently disabled, right? So let's begin with adding a job role, adding myself. Let's just add myself. So I'll add myself as a staff. This is just the HRM module which was already there. So let's just add myself. So I am adding myself. Let's just say this is email address. Let's just put it. Yeah. Right. So let's also add a job title for me, which would be student. So that is my job title. I got that here, and I save myself. Says required field. It says I have been added. Right. So now let's go to the rostering tool. Right. Now the first thing I would have to do is create a table for my roster. This would identify which event I want to create the roster for. So I go to tables, and let's say I want to create an event for project beta, which starts on September the 4th. So I create a table, and it populates this entry which is the event is a project, if the name project beta, which starts on 4th September 2012. Right, I can also delete this if I wish. I mean, if I think I've added the wrong one. Right, so once this is done, I would go and manage shifts. Right, so I'd click on the manage shifts option. Now this would give me a list of slots, shifts which are already there, which are already pre-populated in the database. If not, I can go to add slots and open and add a record. But let's just say I want to create a roster which goes for afternoon, evening and night. So I just select them and I say set shifts. So these shifts have been set for my table. Week 1 shift afternoon, right? If I wish to change, I can go to evening. This just refreshes with evening as the parameter, or I can go back to afternoon, right? So now let's add a job role. I want the roster to have a team leader, few team members, one instructor, couple of trainees, or let's just add a student instead. So yeah, I added all the slots. I thought I would be requiring for this roster. That it requires a team leader, 2 team members, 1 instructor, 1 trainee and 1 student. So now I can basically go ahead and roster. The tooltip says that roster this position as an optional slot, so when I click on it, it gets gray colored. Gray according to the index is an optional slot, but I want all the team leader slots, at least on the weekdays, to be essential, to be the required slots. So I have to click on the star, right? So I click on the star and imply that these slots are required slots for the roster. Team members, yes, I require 1 team member each on the weekdays. Right, and another team member is optional on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays. Instructors I require on the other day, which is the Tuesday and the Thursday, but if it's fine if the instructor doesn't turn up or if he comes only for 1 day, so I just left the slot as optional. Trainee is again an optional event, so I'm just marking that as an optional slot. Student, yes, we require a student when on, let's say, Tuesdays and Thursdays, right? So this is what I have done in my first iteration. Let's save this. So it says successfully saved your save, meaning that the roster table has been saved as such. Now I wish to assign people for team leader slot. So I have these people who have the team leader job title associated with them. Let's say I associate them and go ahead, and then I have a person whom I know can come on Friday. I am not sure about Wednesday and Thursday, so I can just leave that blank, and it just says required, so at probably a later date I can fill this. It's not necessary for me to fill it up right now. Again, over here for team members, the list gets populated with people who have team members in their job title, so I can select amongst them. I just have to select the corresponding assign button and choose from an option here. That's what I do. Yeah, so this is done, and team trainee, then let's see trainees. Trainees is Jim Paul, so basically I'm just populating the data. This data will change from person to person, but that's what I'm just populating the data based on the roster and the criteria that here this role is of a trainee, the job title is of a trainee, so it looks up, queries the database for trainee and then correspondingly brings up the list. I can also search in here. If I search the text looks up in the name and populates it accordingly. I can search for Andy and then it basically shows up the names which have the common words in them. So that's that. Also I added myself as a student, right? So if I go to assign student, it shows up my name right here. So basically, yeah, it shows up my name here, and let's just say I realize that I don't want to do this, I don't want to be assigned, I can just click on release and not be here. And yeah, so this is what I have in this iteration. So let me just save this here. Right, now let's, right, and then I can move on. I can go to evening and I can repeat the process over here, and just to show that if I go back to afternoon, the positionings are still there. This table is saved as such. Also another thing which happens is let's say we have, oh, another thing we could do is we could remove a slot. So if this, I realize that this slot is not really essential and it's not going to be filled later on, I can just remove this position from roster. Right, so now let's just add this position and this position, and probably not add this position, assign Jordy Brown here, and we save this. Right, now if we go back, go somewhere else and then come back, you would notice that Jordy Brown moved from this cell to here. But what it does is it looks up the corresponding job role, and if in the same job role there's an entry available, there's a position vacant in a higher row, it automatically moves that position up. Why this is necessary is because sometimes you might have more than one row, and I mean in the with the advantage of moving all the rosters up by one cell, you might realize that an entire row is redundant. Like for instance, if I didn't have this criteria of these optional slots, and I just had Jordy Brown here, and I had saved this, basically just coming back on this page, I would realize that this entire row is redundant, and I can safely remove this role from roster because it's not necessary. So I just click the minus sign here and it goes away, and everything moves up correspondingly. So this is what it does. If I make some changes and at that time I realize that that's not really necessary, I can go to cancel, which basically nullifies those changes and returns to the previous saved state. Also, I can clear up the entire roster table if I think it's wrong and it's not going the right way. For this, all I have to do is click the reset button, and there, the entire database is clear. So yes, this is my roster tool. It has a menu over here which says table, slots, and then these are the HRM functionalities which are just linked to the HRM module, right? How do you reach this is when you start off Eden, if you are in my branch, you can go to the roster tool option and you can just reach this index page. You start off with building a table and then move thereon. I have also created a user guide which is linked on my index page. The user guide describes steps for the entire process. It also describes the workflow and has screenshots for them. And yes, so basically that's my project. Thanks.